Hey everyone, it's Victoria with Nutrition by Victoria. I have a master's of science degree in human nutrition, and I'm here to help you build a high functioning metabolism with a high carb, low fat diet. So today's a very special video because I am bringing on a guest. My guest is Hadley. She's a member of my coaching group, and she has had a lot of success with a high carb, low fat, plant-based vegan diet. She is a mom. She works as a professional, as a software developer, and she's also an athlete. And she has recovered from metabolic damage. And so we're going to talk a lot about that today because I know many of you are coming from, a low carb, calorie restrictive, keto diet. And so I want to kind of give you some faith that there is a light at the end of the tunnel with Hadley's story. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yay. So we'll just go ahead and get started with Hadley's with your backstory. So like some past dieting history, kind of what you were doing before you found a high carb, low fat diet.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I've I've had a history of yo-yo dieting for many years. I think I was thinking about this earlier, and I first started to kind of notice and be aware of like my body, and I'm tall like you are, Victoria. I'm like 5'10", and I was always bigger than all the the other kids, so I felt a bit out of place. And I did start noticing my like that I was bigger than other kids probably around the age of 8. So that's probably kind of where it all started, where I kind of was like being more conscious of what I was eating, and that kind of like trickled down to when I was a teenager. And I had some role models in my life that, they didn't eat all day and then they just kind of like pick a little bit at night or end up like binging once in a while in the evening. So I kind of followed that a little bit because I thought, oh, I have to starve myself in order to look like, I guess at the time it would have been like Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera. I was like, that's clearly what they're doing. They're starving themselves, so I should do that too. And I
Right.
didn't, I didn't,
It was totally
yeah,
like a thing back then. uh,
yeah,
yeah, it
like
was
that
like
early
early
2000s.
2000s. Yep.
Yeah, it was quite the time because there was no body diversity really. It was mostly just like this one body type, petite, just like tiny girl basically. And I'm like, I do not look like that.
Right.
There was not a whole lot of representation of like my body type. I felt like because I'm tall, I have like wider hips, I'm a lady, and there just wasn't that. So yeah, I did a lot of like restricting in high school, which eventually led to being bulimic, and that went on for a while, and then it was like binging bulimia. And then I started taking illegal drugs actually in order to kind of like, well, if I take this, then I won't have to eat. And
Yeah.
it did work for, but obviously that's a terrible thing to do. Like I remember when I lost like 10 pounds, it was probably just like water weight from like not eating and going to work and running around because I worked at McDonald's at the time. So I was like working in a fast food restaurant and not eating and taking illicit drugs. And I remember getting on the scale and I'm like, wow, I am really skinny. This is working. Obviously, you just gain it right back. Yeah. And yeah, so that went on my whole teenage life, which is unfortunate because that's when you're doing your most growing and whatnot. Um, and I wasn't an athlete. Like when I was like 19, I couldn't even run 10 minutes straight without like being out of breath and just wanting to die basically. Like I had no cardiovascular at all. Um, and then when I got to be in my 20s, that's when I got more into working out and kind of like over exercising, like working out like up to 2 hours a day. Like I think I mentioned this in a video, but I would like if I was going out with my friends, I would have to do at least like an hour and a half of exercise before I could go out to eat because I didn't deserve to have my food unless I like kind of earned it, like that kind of mentality, which
Hmm.
is unfortunate. um,
Yeah,
so
but you
yeah.
know what? I really appreciate the detail that you're giving though, because so many women and men too can relate to going through similar experiences and feeling that pressure, that social pressure to like be like have the perfect body, and I feel
Yeah.
like doing all this experimenting ultimately is what leads people to the right path eventually, hopefully.
Yeah, and I mean, I am in a way like I feel almost kind of like lucky that I, in a way, kind of like didn't have the perfect body as a teenager because I probably would have just been like, oh, I don't need to do the work. I don't need
Right.
to find anything else, kind of thing. But yeah, so in my early 20s, it was a lot of, like trying low carb diets. I got really into like bodybuilding scene, so like lifting super heavy weights and injuring myself because I didn't know what I was doing. I just went to the gym and just watched other people, and I'm like, oh, what are they doing? Like, I'll just try doing what they're doing. Like, no, like formal training at all in what I was doing. I really should have like had a personal trainer or something. I do not recommend just going to the gym and picking up heavy things. Like, it's not good. It's not a good idea. But yeah, like low carb diet, very meat heavy. Like I was like a big time meat eater in my early 20s. Like it'd be like meat, some sort of meat for breakfast, like eggs as a snack, or like cottage cheese, yogurt, and then just like meat and potatoes kind of deal. So very, very meat heavy. And yeah, so I tried, but I would kind of like bounce back and forth. And of course, like you do, you end up binging out on like high fat, high sugary like desserts because you're not getting in the carbs that you
Right,
need.
right.
Um, so I was talking about this in a video I did today, and I was mentioning that I would just go and like be like, oh, I'm doing really good with this like low carb thing, and then I would end up eating like 25 desserts like in a sitting almost like it was
Wow.
like yeah, I would binge because people would bring in desserts to my old workplace all the time, and it was like Christmas time, and I'd always be like, oh, well, it's Christmas, so and I couldn't help it.
Right. I
It just
mean,
happened.
that's the thing. Like your instincts take over, especially if you're
Yeah.
doing like a more low carb diet, like and it's totally normal to kind of fluctuate, go back and forth where you're like you have the media telling you to do like the low carb thing, right?
Hmm.
I mean, because that's where we all kind of learned about it from is
Yeah.
just like TVs, advertisements, celebrities telling you, low carb is the way to get the results that you want. And then it's like
Yeah.
in the meantime, you're binging out because you're like, oh, I can't, do this because I'm craving these carbs, but then you feel like a failure and it's just like a wicked cycle.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I was actually thinking, and this kind of reminded me of Harley because he's always going on about KFC, but I remember one time I went for like a 20-mile bike ride, and I came home and I'm pretty sure literally ate like almost an entire bucket of like family-sized KFC to myself because I was so hungry because I just wasn't eating
Wow.
enough. But yeah, I can definitely eat, and I mean like if I wasn't on high carb, low fat now, I would 100% be overweight or obese because I just like I I wouldn't be able to stop myself. I would just eat because I love to eat because everybody wants
Yeah.
to eat. But
Well, exactly. And you know what? That ability to eat, a lot is like such a virtue on this lifestyle.
yeah,
So let's talk about like what made you make the change? What inspired you to shift into like a high carb, low fat diet? I'm also
sure,
going
yeah,
to share my screen right now so that we can
okay.
see kind of like your transformation
Hmm.
based off of your Instagram. And so you can go
Yes,
ahead and kind of, can you see my screen? Okay.
I can. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
good.
uh,
Okay.
yeah. So, well, I went vegan when I was 24, so I've been vegan for about 10, almost 9, 10 years now. And I was always aware of like Freely and Durian Rider. And I thought, oh my God, Freely looks amazing. I'm like, but there's no way that there's no way I can eat that many calories and like be slim like her. Because I was convinced that, oh, they're just, Harley and Freely are just so lean because they don't have a job. They can just exercise. Like I was convinced they just exercised all day and they weren't actually telling the truth about what they really did, which now I know is not true at all.
Right, right.
Um, yeah, so I was always like relatively high carb, low fat. Like I was not into eating oils because I knew that those were not good for you. But I didn't really know what I was doing when I first went vegan. So I was just like, oh yeah, like this is high carb, low fat, but I didn't really fully understand what that meant. So um, but I was still restricting at the time too, because I was like, well, I can't eat all that because I'll just get fat. So a couple of
Is
years went by. Oh, sorry.
is this photo kind of like when you were restricting?
Yeah, that
Okay.
would be, yeah. So that was like right before I decided to like go high carb, low fat, like
Okay.
I would say like all in the first time.
Okay.
Because I just didn't feel good. Like I was obviously very lean, and I would I was still exercising quite a bit. Like I'd exercise for like, I don't know, an hour a day, but then I'd walk my dog for an hour a day. And then of course, I didn't have my daughter then, so I could just do whatever I wanted. Like I would go out after work or go climbing or do basically anything. And it was always had to be like I was always on the go. Like I didn't believe in sitting down because I just always needed to be active or else I would get fat in my mind.
Hmm.
So I felt I did not feel good. Like there was like days where I could like barely get out of bed, or I had this weird thing happen where it felt like the world was moving. Like I'd be walking, but it felt like the world was tilting. And I'm like,
Okay.
this is not right. Yeah, I don't know what that was about, but I was like, I need to do something. And I thought of Freely again, and I'm like, okay, she says that, you're probably going to gain weight. And I'm like, okay, I'm willing to accept, I'm willing to accept that. So yeah, that's actually when I went high carb, low fat the first time. And I didn't, obviously I gained some weight, but clearly it was weight that I needed to gain because before I was obviously like underweight. Like I think I would have been sitting
Right.
around a BMI of like 18 or something like that in that photo.
Okay.
Yeah, so pretty lean. And then I think I just ended up honestly gaining more muscle there, like, and just kind of like toning up a bit, which was great. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. I'm like, I'm not becoming overweight, but I was very, very fit and active at the time, like I was saying. So that might have had a bit to do with it. Also, I don't think I was like eating as much as I needed to. Like even though I was eating like 3,000 to 4,000 calories, like given my activity level, I think I probably needed to eat more because I was still hungry throughout the day. And I would be like, oh no, I can't. I need to just eat breakfast, lunch, and then supper. And I wouldn't really have snacks in between. I don't know
Okay.
why. I was also still afraid of sugar in this picture.
Yeah.
I wouldn't eat refined sugar. I was kind of afraid of white rice too. I was very much like whole foods were the way to go. Like I can't eat processed foods.
Yeah. I
So,
remember
you
going
know,
through a similar like phase too. And it was honestly what was being pushed through the social
mhm,
media. You had Freely and Harley saying like sugar's good and white
yeah,
rice is good and cereal is good. And then everybody else is like, but wait, like if you want to be lean, like you have to eat whole food.
yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's hard getting that many whole foods in. Like,
Right.
um, I mean, obviously, I was still, I'd have like a 25 date smoothie, but at night it was typically always potatoes. Which I love potatoes, but sometimes sometimes it's a bit much. And like
Yeah.
it was so time consuming to eat all those potatoes and like bake them and prep them. And rice is so much easier,
Yes.
as you know.
I definitely
um,
agree with that one too.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I love me some baked potatoes, but like, it is time consuming. So
Yeah.
it was around this time, this was probably the summer. And then I got pregnant
Yeah.
at the end of the summer.
Okay.
Um, and that's a whole other story in its own because that did not go well. Like I I don't know, I was very sick during my first trimester, like the nausea, and I couldn't eat. Like I was having trouble like eating salads like I was used to, or like even some fruits kind of bothered me. Um, so I just decided, like, I just was like, well, if I can't eat these things, then I should try to force myself to like eat only whole foods. So I ended up under eating for sure. Like I felt terrible my whole pregnancy. I had no energy. I remember trying to just vacuum the floor and I had to sit down like so many times and I was like, what is wrong with me? I'm like, I'm eating all these whole foods and like I should be thriving, but I wasn't.
Hmm.
Um, I barely gained any weight I think in my third trimester, I only gained 3 pounds,
Wow.
which, yeah, it was not good. It was, and no one was concerned. So I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't be concerned.
Hmm.
Um, they sent me for some ultrasounds to and like she was fine. It was just like I was not doing well.
Yeah.
And then I ended up um, with preeclampsia, which was shocking to me. But I think it was because my body was under so much stress. Like I was still working out, I was still walking the dog um, as much as I could. Like I was still like, no, I need to do these things. But sometimes I'm sure I was eating under 2,000 calories,
Oh,
which
wow.
yeah, so it was not good. So the pregnancy didn't go well, the birth didn't go well, ended up in emergency C-section.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so that was traumatizing. And then there was the trouble with the breastfeeding. So I was very depressed after after the birth.
Understandably, yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, well, what did I do wrong? Like I
Hmm.
didn't understand that, I needed to include those refined carbs in order for me to get the calories in that I needed.
Right.
So yeah, the postpartum, like I don't know what they call postpartum depression, anxiety, but I still wasn't eating enough, um,
Hmm.
which I think contributed to that. And then I had trouble breastfeeding, and I ended up pumping for like 7 months, which was
Which is,
awful.
well,
It
and
was so
that's incredible. I
awful.
mean, the fact that you did
Oh,
that is really like, willpower right there because it's hard to pump.
yeah. Well, and it was just, it would stress me out because and I still wasn't able to get enough. So I just eventually, switched to formula, but that was very disheartening because like that is not what I wanted to happen at all, obviously. Like you want to give
Yeah,
your baby the best nutrition, right? Like,
right.
um, and then I found your channel actually in the middle of all this kerfluffle, and I was just like, dang, I really wish that I had found your channel before I, had gotten pregnant. And then I think the outcome would have been a lot better. Because you really helped me, well, first of all, understand the science because like Harley talks about it a little. Freely didn't really talk about it. They talk about it here and there, but it was like really that like deep understanding of like how carbohydrates work in our body and why we should keep it low fat and like how insulin is used and how insulin resistance comes about. So thank you very much because you changed my life basically. um,
Well, I remember like when I think you had messaged me and you told me, everything that was going on because I was asking
mhm,
questions and stuff and yeah, I just couldn't I was so impressed by you because most people, I give them the advice and they're like, "Oh, well, I don't want to like do some of this or go through like a weight gain period or something,"
mhm.
because you did go through a bit of a weight gain period. Correct. I think
Yeah.
we'll talk about maybe is this relative to that time?
Well, that was actually when I first went vegan.
Okay.
And but that one is
Okay.
like that's probably like around my heaviest weight after I kind of went all in after you were like, okay, you need to do this. And I was like, all right.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
I mean, and that's where I was like, I really couldn't wait for, you to start getting the results just because like I knew like well, I never know if somebody's going to actually take the advice and apply it. But
yeah.
when I started seeing like you posting about your results coming in, I was like, oh my gosh, like look at her. Like this is incredible. And like you just transformed like your life. Um,
Yeah.
and I've just been so impressed by your transformation and um yeah, so let's talk about that. So we'll talk about this
Yeah.
photo here and then what you currently look like as well.
Sure, yeah. Well, I ended up, I started eating like more calories and it was hard. It was very hard because, I was used to being really lean. And I remember saying to my partner, like, people used to refer me as like the tall, fit girl. And now look at me, I'm, this is what I look like. And, I'm not to say that I look terrible or anything, because I didn't really gain that much weight, like in the scheme of things. Like it's not like I gained 100 pounds or anything like that, obviously. It
Right.
was probably about like 10, 15 pounds. Um, but yeah, it was hard, but my mental health started to improve. And that was to me the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because like it was a pretty dark time. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like when I reached out to you, like I was like basically at the end of my rope.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to do something. Um, and I guess because I didn't gain weight the first time, I was like, this was harder because I was like, well, it's because I'm not exercising enough. But like, that wasn't the problem. I just needed to let my body like do its thing
Yeah.
and sort itself out. And like, I wasn't very patient with myself, like, because, clearly I had just had a baby and I expected to just like, people expect to just bounce back, but it's like you have so many hormones and everything else going on in your life. Like you
Yeah.
have to give yourself some time and some grace. And like you also helped me understand that women, they hold on to more fat after, you have a baby for like your breast milk supply and like your hormones and all that stuff. So, I think that's a really important message, like for women to understand that it's not just like they should be focused on like their baby and providing nutrition to their baby and like the result, like you'll get your body back eventually. um, but yeah, it took me about it took me about 2.5, little over 2 years just to get back to how I am looking now. So I was, I did eventually, like, I think if you, the next picture, um, there was a picture, I think, of me in a bathing suit, which I think at that point I had lost a little bit of weight. Like my weight had cut, but it was kind of started going down and down and down. And then it was just kind of recently where I was more focused on my fitness goals as opposed to weight loss. Because I've been getting into like doing running challenges and races and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, well, I know for me to run faster, I need to be leaner. So that was like my focus. And so yeah, that's the photo.
Okay.
So I did kind of lean out a little bit at that point, but not to the point where I am now, obviously. But yeah, so like instead of me focusing on like, oh my gosh, look at how much weight I've gained, or I don't look the way I want, I was like, well, what can I do in order to be faster and fitter? And that became like my main focus as opposed to like weight related goals.
And I think that's really important because it shifts the focus, right? Because it's not always like our body and the way that it looks. So often people forget that it's a reflection of what we can do with our
Mm-hmm.
body. So shifting the focus to fitness is what I tell all my clients, and that's what like Harley's messages and Freely's messages at the beginning, because it can be very disheartening to go through the weight gain period regardless of
Yeah.
how much it is, whether it's 5 pounds or 60 pounds like what I
Mm-hmm.
experienced.
Yeah, for sure.
It takes you by the you know whatever, but it takes you by surprise is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, yeah.
But you do have to like, it's a letting go process though. You have to like let your body do its thing. You have to let your body relax. You have to let it heal
Mm-hmm.
metabolically by giving it what it needs. And so often people think, they get into the dogma of like, well, I want to be raw vegan though, and I need to be whole foods, and I can't eat sugar, and I can't eat
Mm-hmm.
rice. And then you put yourself in this little box, and that's how you end up like in the first version of the high carb, low fat vegan diet that you were doing, because you had all these like restrictions on yourself. And
Yeah.
so often, like a lot of the people that I work with, they come to me and they have the same thing, and then they're not willing to like go through the weight gain because you're just like holding on to something that's not even doing you any good. It's actually damaging your health, like slowly
Yeah.
but surely. And
Yeah.
I think your pregnancy was a reflection of the metabolic stress that your body was under from just not being able to consume enough carbohydrate.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And like, if that's like a big regret of mine, but obviously you can't go back. So you just got to move forward and kind of
Yeah.
fix it. But like, a big thing is like, I wanted to be more mentally stable, like, obviously, of course, for my daughter and just for my family. So, like, that was
Right.
also a big motivator.
Yeah. And I
um,
think you said too that you've received a promotion at work. Um,
yeah. Yeah. I went back to work. It's probably a year and a half ago now. And yeah, I just got promoted to the next level up and got a decent sized raise. So, that was, like I came back to work and I was just kind of like, felt like I could like remember things a lot better than I did before. And like I just was like, I was just on it,
Yeah.
which I was like, what's happening? But it's
Well,
definitely because I was fueling myself, right?
right. Yeah, I was gonna say like that's the thing. Like you put the sugar in and it just becomes like basic biochemistry, basic metabolic health or science at that point where you put the sugar in, you get the energy out, and then you have, the energy to fuel your body and
Mhm.
fuel your life. So I want to click on now this is one of your recent reels.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like a before and after reel. I love that you've been creating this. Your social media is really amazing, and I really encourage anybody who's watching this video to go and follow Hadley on Instagram. Her handle is Hadley's High Carb Kitchen, and then you also have a YouTube channel that you've been
Yeah.
uploading to.
Yeah, I just started that. But yeah, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I really just like, I just want people to not restrict their calories and end up like where I ended up. And because it can affect someone more than yourself, right? Like,
Right.
um,
Oh
and it's
yeah,
just,
it
yeah,
has a ripple effect like through the rest
yeah,
of your life. And I really believe in like the law of attraction, where if you're, putting good in and taking care of yourself, like that's going to like have that other ripple effect in your life too, where everything else is going to be positively influenced.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm also happier now too, because if you're getting in the sugar, like, and I can stay calmer more, which is kind of, it's a challenge sometimes when you're a mom, but like,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
for
it
real.
just makes your life, it makes life easier. Um,
Yeah.
and that's what I want for everyone else, because as you know, and as I know, it sucks to go through like, starvation and like just wondering why you're not getting the results that you think you should, kind of thing. So,
Right. And I think that by learning like why not to like do that or why it doesn't work, people can
mhm.
really understand why they keep getting the results that they're getting too, like following a calorie deficit. Okay, you're going to lose weight, but then, the weight gains on the other side of that. Whereas this diet is you eat all the carbs and then you
Yeah.
get the results. So I
Yeah.
want to show one of your what I eat in a day reels here. Here we go. So
I think
lots
a
of
lot of it.
fruit.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. And that was just, I love, sometimes I just like plain greens. Like, I'm not a huge salad dressing person. I never have been, but um, yeah, I just like the greens sometimes.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like I usually will eat my starches with my greens, like maybe put like
Hmm.
some soy sauce on it or something, but I was never into like salad dressings either. But yeah, that's a really good, example of how Hadley eats, is raw till 4, fruit till 4. Um
Hmm.
and you can check out her Instagram for more like what I eat in days, because she's been uploading pretty regularly. So the last thing I kind of want to talk about before we run out of time here is showing your Strava data, because you are just killing it with your racing. So um when did you get into like running racing?
But this year, well, 2024 was the first time I ever did that, like a race at all. And it was that 5K race where I ended up doing a 23-minute 5K, which shocked
Yeah.
me myself. But like, yeah, and I ended up placing third, which was pretty cool, for women, of course. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and I mean, I like honestly, like I need to do, I since I've never raced, I should learn to do better at pacing myself. But like, yeah, I mean, I was impressed. I pushed it and it worked out.
Yeah,
So
no, that time is super impressive, especially for being like your first like 5K race,
yeah,
23:15. That's really incredible. And then you recently ran a 10K. And now you guys need to know that Hadley lives in like the tundra, okay?
I do. It's so cold here.
And it's been winter time. So, like, what was the temperature when you ran this 10K?
Oh, you know what? It wasn't too bad. I was actually kind of blessed because I was worried it was going to be like -30 like it had been. I think it's probably, like -8 or something like that. So, but the sun was out. So,
Yeah, that makes a
that was
difference.
nice. And there was no wind, so that also was
Okay.
helpful. But yeah, no, it was still pretty cold. Um,
Yeah, but that time is super impressive. 51:33 for a 10K for your first 10K race. I mean, that is
yeah.
really, really incredible considering that, you didn't have like much of a athletic background in terms of like in high school or anything. It just really goes to show like the power of you putting the right nutrition in to your body.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like I said, I could not, like when I was 19, 20, I couldn't even run for 10 minutes, like without gasping for air and like wanting to throw up, basically. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I
it's
can
quite the
relate. Like
change.
I was never like a good runner either. And but this eating this way, it just like maximizes your hemoglobin levels, your VO2 max. And yeah,
Yeah.
you get the
Well, and
benefits.
yeah, I should also mention that I grew up in a household where people smoked around me, like secondhand smoke all the time. Like my dad, my mom, my grandmother, they all smoked. Like, so
Oh,
for me to be able
geez.
to like run those times is, kind of a blessing in a way because I'm just like, okay, my lungs aren't that damaged, but this diet really, really does a number for sure.
Yeah, it really optimizes your body and its ability to function at like a cellular level. And I really look forward to like continuing to watch your progression with your athletics because if this is just the start, like can you imagine, 5 years from now how you'll be performing?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. Well, and I have a 20K relay race coming up. We're running across, well, I live on an island, so we're running across the island and I'm doing 20K of that. So my goal is to do it in an hour and a half, an hour and 40. So anyways, I'm starting training now. So I'm kind
Yeah.
of hoping, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great. And I just got back into doing running races myself and they really just like push you to the edge, because you got everybody
Hmm.
else running with you like versus just like when you're running on your own. But yeah, I think for those of you who want to, like I'll leave links for all of Hadley's social media in the description of this video so you can follow her on Strava, Instagram and on YouTube.
Great.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Let's see if we have any questions. Also, how old are you?
Oh, I'm 33.
33. Okay. So
Yeah.
I mean, you are a spring chicken, like you're definitely young, but
Yeah.
like some of the viewers might be like, wow, like 33, like that's
Well,
old now,
yeah,
So
I know. But I mean, it's funny because like, I mean, I think I look my age.
I think
But
you look younger
oh,
personally.
thank you. Thank
Because
you.
I
I mean,
didn't know. I was like, I knew that you had a daughter and you have like an awesome job. So I figured you weren't like freshly like
yeah.
college age, but
Well,
yeah.
when I did my 5K race, the lady who won, she was like, I was talking to her and I was like, you're so fast and stuff. And then I was like, oh, I can't stick around because I have to go pick up my daughter. And she's like, what do you mean? She's like, I thought you were in high school. And I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, I don't think I look that young, but thank you.
No, I mean sometimes you do this diet and I cannot tell like how old people are because
Hmm.
it really maximizes your youth like based on we all come with like past history that could have damaged us to a certain extent
Yeah.
but I feel like the recovery is good and you said that your recovery took about 2 years after you went all
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
so, I mean that is a time frame that most people can't expect too because a lot of people they start this and they're like, "Well, when are my results coming?" Like, I wanted them
Yeah.
yesterday. And it's like, "Well, you really need to be patient and
Hmm.
consistent in order for this to work." And it's really
Oh,
like
yeah.
a transformation process.
Yeah, and it is hard. I mean, I know waiting is hard, but you just, like I said, you just got to find something to focus on that isn't weight related. Like fitness goals are really good, or like, I mean, if you have kids, like focusing on them, like,
Yeah.
is great too.
Yeah.
I remember you saying in a video, like, I just don't have time to to worry about like that right now because you're so busy. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of a blessing, right?
Yeah, no, it really is. I think when I first got started, it was a lot harder because I was traveling around with my husband. I had a job for a little bit, but I was mostly like by myself all the time, just like having to
Hmm.
reflect on like, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? And it's just like,
Yeah.
you know, you have to find things to fill up your cup. And I think too, just like enjoying the journey, because I remember spending a lot of time just like dabbling in other things. Like I'd try Starch Solution or like completely raw vegan or,
Hmm.
ways to like restrict my carb intake, but still eat enough. And you kind of like go through that and you phase it out because you realize it doesn't work.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it gives you more of an appreciation for your body because you realize what it can do, kind of thing. And like,
Absolutely.
um, yeah, like I mean, like I've always been relatively thin my whole adult life because, restriction and like over exercising. So when I was like forced into that situation, it's like, okay, well, there's more things about myself than just the way I look, kind of thing, which is also an important realize.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
it gets back to like what you were talking about at the beginning, where our generation was literally like indoctrinated with like
Hmm.
thin spo, and that was the only accepted body type. And now, at least in the modeling industry, you see a lot more variety with age and race and weight. Like it's
Hmm.
really great because I think that body acceptance is really important on this path where you can just like accept yourself and where you're
Yeah.
currently at, because that's how you get to the other side. That's how you get to that like aesthetic that you've always wanted.
Hmm. Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, like back in the early 2000s, like I would have been considered a plus size model, right? Like, because you don't have that small like hip going on. Like it's not like we look like Natasha, like she looks more like a model kind of thing. It's like
Right,
that body
right.
type versus like, but yeah, it was not good for the mental health.
Yeah,
Have-
no, and
yeah.
and it's like goes into just like different body types, like what you're saying. I think Natasha is 5'10", you're 5'10", and I think her weight averages like maybe like 130 pounds.
Hmm.
And like when I was that weight, because I'm almost 6 foot, I'm like 5'11" and a half, maybe
Yeah.
almost 6 foot. When I was 130 pounds, I was anorexic, so
Yeah, because we just have different bone structure. Like I obviously have a bigger bone structure than she does, and I believe that you do too. That doesn't like weighing a little bit more than someone else your same height doesn't doesn't really mean anything. It's all relative to your genetics, I guess.
absolutely. And I always encourage everyone to like just aim for like a being in a healthy BMI range, get there on this diet, and then from there you'll kind of go down. So I know recently you said that you had lost some weight.
Yeah.
And it probably had to do with like your fitness increasing and just consistency on the diet and your hormones balancing.
Yeah, and sleeping better has
Oh yeah.
definitely, yeah, because it took my daughter like 2.5 years almost to sleep through the night. So
Yeah, I remember you saying that, and that can really do a number on you. So would you mind sharing what your current weight is?
yeah, I think the last time I weighed myself, I was about 66 kilos.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So
I think
I don't know
that
what that is in pounds,
I
but
think it's like 140 something in pounds.
yeah,
Yeah, which is
yeah,
quite light, honestly, for being 5'10" too. I'd say your BMI is probably like 19 or 20, something like that. But
yeah.
we are just about out of time. So I want to just thank you for coming on. This has been a pleasure. I really appreciate you coming on and chatting with everybody and chatting with me and sharing your story. And thank you to the viewers for tuning in. You can leave any comments or questions down below. And like I said, Hadley's social media, you can find it in the description box. And yeah,